That's us recording now. Thanks to everyone for turning up to the UMIP Preview Community Call. We've got 2 UMIPs up for review today. Add IBBTC as collateral, and then also an omnibus collateral add. Sean, hi.
And then there's also another like UPP.
Oh yes, okay.
Yes, I added already in the summary page.
I think I missed that so far, but because it just went up quite recently. Cool. Okay, the first one that we had was the add IBBTC one. Sean, you've been working with hash error in that one. Do you want to speak to it?
Sure. I mean, I think it's relatively straightforward. There were a bunch of comments on it, but it was mostly like cleanup stuff and some content that was left over from some previous UMIPs. Specifically, like things I'd caught were some comments about rebasing that looked like they were copied over from the DIG UMIP and didn't apply to IBBTC. And then also, I know we always have this thing where it's like some people ask for subgraph queries and other people don't. I think since this is always intended to be used with the TWAP, and we've had conversations about this before, like you should just remove the subgraph queries, which a bunch of the other comments are about also. But like the big, I guess like the big concept here that might not be as straightforward is this depends on being able to get the price from Polygon and ETH at the same time and medianize those two. It's just not like functionality that we have built out in our price feeds currently. So for proposer bots, it might not work automatically right away, but that is something we're building out right now and shouldn't be a large fix. And we won't need it until this is actually requested. So I don't see it as like a major blocker personally.
Also, we don't have like in motivation specified the intended use case. So, and that also impacts this price feed question, whether or not it is like liquidable contracts would be using this or only for LSP contracts.
It's a good point. It definitely should be noted in motivation. I can tell you just from working with hash error that it's not used in any of our liquidatable contracts. It's used for their IBBTC mechanism. So it would be like a pure optimistic Oracle integration.
Okay, then it's definitely easier, and then this price feed is not a blocker at all.
I'd agree.
Cool. So is that good to go? Perhaps with notes about what might need to be adapted before it's used live, but without any conditions.
I mean, I think there's just some cleanup, like small content cleanup things. Hash error is like aware of the comments, so he said he'd be addressing later on today. They're all like minor things. So I don't view them as blockers by any means. Yeah, so I think it's generally good to go.
Okay, without the condition of the Polygon ETH medianizing, yeah?
Yeah,
The price
I mean,
we don't need that as a condition.
yeah, so it wouldn't even be like completely manual in a way. Well, like we could still calculate the prices, and then just take the average ourselves That's basically the only step that's missing, is like being able to query both things at the same time. So we could do like manual responses if this, became a blocker. Of course, that's not optimal, but yeah, I don't think it's a blocker.
Cool. So we're good to go on that one. The second one we had was a collateral add.
Actually, one more thing on the IBBTC one. I think there's more scenarios now where we see things like TWAP needing to be adjusted. So it might be like good best practice for us to recommend that. I don't know. What do you guys think? To recommend that like TWAP length is passed in ancillary data?
If it's used only on LSP contracts, then yeah, that might be a good idea, because depending on specific use case, this TWAP period might be different. For example, if it's used for rebasing, and then you need maybe daily values or some other period. If it's some other use case, then maybe it's more frequent and lower amount. But
Okay.
I think it's all subject to use case.
So do you think that's a recommendation we should make?
Unless it's intended to be used in UMIP contracts, then yes, I think that's a good recommendation to make.
Okay. Sorry, Var.
I was just going to say that it makes sense to have it in, even when the intended use at the time of writing the UMIP isn't to have it in EMP contracts. It kind of future-proofs it if you have it in auxiliary data.
Definitely.
Cool. Shall we move on to the collateral omnibus? And do we want to make that a condition of this particular one, that they move the TWAP to?
No.
No? Okay.
I think it's just optional.
Okay. Will we move on to the collateral omnibus? Chandler, do you want to speak to this one? There's a couple of small things that Raina's picked up on ribbon final fee and the REN BTC final fee.
I didn't actually get a chance to look at the last set of comments. Do you mind actually just bringing them up so I can have a quick look at them?
Yep, sure. Why was ribbon chosen? Why was 10,000 ribbon chosen? And not currently have a price.
Yeah, so it doesn't have a price. I should add this actually. 10,000 ribbon. It's arbitrary. That means that if the token starts its trading price at less than 5 cents, then that equates to about $400. And if you look at I think they have 100 million or 1 billion tokens being sold. If you look at like other markets that had a initial token offering, they normally start at around 50 cents. So I went 10 times more than what like one or two other teams went when they went for a $1 billion, for a billion token initial token launch and distribution. So 10,000 tokens would mean that any price below 4 cents per token would be would make it less than $400. And I felt that was kind of a close enough figure for me to be personally comfortable on.
It might be, seems like pretty reasonable, but it might be better to talk about these things in terms of like expected starting market cap. So at 4 cents it would mean ribbon token would have a $40 million market cap, right? And yeah, this is kind of like arbitrary, but that does seem pretty low for the amount of traction that Ribbon has. So if we use a comp of like $100 million starting market cap, then it'd be 10 cents and the final fee would be like $1,000, right? Which seems pretty good.
Yeah, and I think just to be clear on anyone on this call, this is just, you know, it's the first time we're adding a token that hasn't got a live price feed yet for us to get a reasonable figure. And so I think the point of us figuring out a way to handle tokens that don't have a live price and like how we want to handle that might be a better discussion. And if we can come to some sort of like heuristic on how to handle these token types, then I think I can amend this UMIP to reflect that.
Cool. Yeah, it does seem to be really hard to try and estimate something that isn't actually trading. Should we amend?
Just out of
do you mean?
curiosity, why do you want to add this before it's listed or trading?
So David, there are two reasons specifically with UMIP products why a team would need their collateral added before their token's live. Some teams would like to launch their initial token offering through a KPI option mechanism, which means that we would have to be able to accept it as a collateral before there's a live price feed. And there might also be a case where a team creates an arbitrary price for their token and sells it off to investors in a range bond or a success token type product. And again, this is before it goes live and might be as like an initial seed of liquidity to early investors, kind of like a fundraising round. And so while this isn't specifically what we're doing with Ribbon right now, it might end up being the case. There are going to be times where that might end up being an outcome.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
$10,000 seems reasonable to me. Like if anything, I would think it's too high. But yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is like we can update this in 2 days as soon as like there's a live market, if needed. So I don't think I think it sounds reasonable.
The other issue that someone raised was the final fee for REN BTC. It might be after the last day that 0.01 is actually more appropriate, but it would be good to match the REN BTC on ETH with the REN BTC on Polygon.
Yep.
Cool. I think I already updated that one, but I haven't commented yet.
Cool. And just a suggestion to change the title and the details about it to kind of specify, because these are kind of odd cases and it would probably be quite good for them to be easily found. But apart from that, we're good to go.
So the omnibus title kind of implies that there's going to be a bunch of currencies. Has it changed to only Ribbon and REN BTC, Chandler?
For now, I think I'm going to keep the naming convention as omnibus, and unless there's one token per ad, because I think that makes sense. In the case of two or more, I would like to keep the omnibus title running for simply for the case that there might end up being one or two additional tokens that come in last minute that if we decide to change the name multiple times, that could get confusing.
I mean, the UMIP name should always be the collateral currencies that you're adding. I mean, PR name, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I have no preference. It's yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of omnibus. It sounds a bit like more bulky. I don't know. It's semantical. Like this is literally a point I hold no reservations for arguing against. So if anyone has a strong opinion, tell me now or forever hold your peace.
I mean, I don't think we really need to discuss it. It was just a comment that omnibus is kind of unnecessary and definitionally incorrect if you're only adding 2, but it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
So a privately chartered omnibus.
I'll leave it up to you to decide whether it changes or not, Chandler.
Okay. If it doesn't pass governance, I'm blaming the name.
The last one was a late addition for UPP to adjust the final fee. This was kind of just an admin issue, I think, just to make sure that the Polygon ones were in line with the ETH ones, if I'm right. Sean, can you talk to this?
Yeah, basically, we had talked about this some previously, but a bunch of like blue chip collateral, like kind of blue chip, whatever that means, but like highly liquid collateral types that were already approved on mainnet were added pre-governance on Polygon. There weren't final fees added with those before governance was switched over, and just like an operational oversight. So this just adds a vote for updating the final fees for all of these, since they're all currently 0. Yeah, so pretty simple, and it all just matches what is already present on mainnet for those types of currencies.
Cool. Any comments on that one?
Do we need to verify the numbers for these, or just assume that they're good?
I checked, but the only one which stands a bit lower is Y Finance. This last one, so it's around 320, I think. But then also on the Ethereum, I need to adjust it.
And that applies to the Ethereum token as well. I think it's probably better just to keep them in line, and then we can update it in the next UPP for both Polygon and ETH mainnet. Does that seem a sensible approach?
I think so, yeah.
Cool. Well, that was a very efficient call today. Is there any other issues that people would like to bring up or discuss?
Not from my side.
Nope.
Cool. Well, thanks again to you all for attending, and see you next week.
So, yeah.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.